Okay, so first of all, I welcome you all to this amazing platform of petroleum engineering for GATE and for the interviews in the good petroleum engineering companies, and that is Institute of Petroleum Engineers (IPE). So today we are going to talk about a very crucial topic in drilling engineering, and that is well control. Like the major accident that can happen in the oil and gas industry, the major accident that has happened in the past in our oil and gas industry, it has all been blowouts. And what I'll be going through various terminologies which we will understand one by one. So just bear with me for some time, and we'll get to know each and everything. So my philosophy of teaching has always been like this, that initially I just don't go through the PPTs. First I talk a bit like a story, and in that way, in the story itself, I'll talk a lot of things which will be covered in the PPT. So if you'll bear with me while I'm talking with you in the terms of story, so it will be very easy for you people to go through the PPT as we move on to the lecture. Okay, so let me first okay, so it's already in the pen mode, like like uh, just okay, fine. So as you can see over here, it's you can see that's a drilling rig. This complete thing is a drilling rig, and from the glimpse from the graphic, you can see that kind of some accident has occurred. So this is nothing but a blowout. As you can see how devastating it's looking like. Just imagine if you are working over here and a gush of this sand particles or a oil or crude oil which we were drilling out just comes like this. What will happen? It will be very devastating, right? And it's a huge impact all over its surroundings. And ultimately it catches fire. So I assume that since you all are petroleum engineers, so you know a bit about the drilling rigs, right? So drilling rig is basically used to drill a well, and at the center of it a hole is drilled. And sometimes what happens is we don't want the crude oil or the formation fluid, the fluid which is present in a formation, which we want to drill out, which we want to bring to the surface, for which we are doing this drilling. We don't want that fluid to come to the surface yet, but due to some accident or due to some negligence, we can say the human error and the different reasons for this, it starts coming out of it. It wasn't intentional, but unintentionally started coming out, and ultimately it catches the fire because we are not controlling it at the surface, and a major accident can happen. So the this whole series is targeting over this, that how to avoid this, and if some situation happens something like that, then how to control it, and how rather than controlling, how to prevent such situations. Okay, so let's go through one by one. As you can see that as the major accident has happened, it has started toppling. So you can see this is a dog house. So dog house basically means it's a bunk house where the drilling crew, the team members of drilling, which are working over this rig floor. This is the rig floor. This is our land. This is our rig floor. Okay, so everyone will be over here who are working for resting or something like that. And why it is known as the dog house? Because since this oil and gas industry is very closely related to our nature, so every terminology that has been used in our oil and gas industry has been you can say has been derived from the nature itself. So dog house, so what is the basic nature or the characteristic of a dog? It's very alert. So dog house means a house. It's for dogs, it's for the men who has to be alert every time. You can't be non-alert at that time, because even a teensy bit of your non-alertness can lead to the major accident like this. So let's talk about the basics of well control first. Now, if I talk about the pressure gradient, so everyone of you have heard about it or have learned about it, that what is the pressure gradient. So basically pressure gradient is nothing but the pressure divided by the depth, and its unit is like the unit of pressure and divided by the unit of depth. So like, let's say we are talking about psi, pounds per square inch upon feet. So it is the pressure exerted by fluid of a given density measured over a given unit depth. So let's say we have some fluid over here. So what is the pressure exerted over here? So let's say this is H, density is rho, and gravity is as usual G. So if I talk about the pressure at point A, it will be nothing but pressure is equals to rho G H. Simple. But in our oil and gas industry, we don't use these formulas directly, because all these formulas are derived for the SI units. But mostly in our oil and gas industry, we follow oil field units. Like for pressure, what is the SI unit? It's Pascal, right? But in our oil field units, we will be using PSI, that is pound per square inch. For density, it is mostly SI. If we talk about the SI unit, it will be kg per meter cube, right? But in our oil and gas industry, in our oil field units, either we will be using it as the ppg, which is pounds per gallon, or lab per feet cube, right? And so on. So what is if I talk about the pressure at the point A in terms of oil field unit, it will be pressure equals to 0.052 multiplied by density into height, and here density will be in ppg, height will be in feet, okay, and pressure will be in, obviously, in psi. Okay, is this clear? I hope so. Okay, what about if we have the different units? So you can go through the unit conversions one by one. So like one more, so basically what is this? This is your, sorry. So basically this is your conversion factor 0.052. One more conversion factor is there. So the pressure is equals to 0.433 into density into H. So here density will be in specific gravity, that or in gram per cc, and height again it will be in feet. Okay. Now, if I, this is the pressure value, but what if I want the pressure gradient? Pressure gradient is nothing but pressure divided by the height or the depth. So we will take this height value from RHS side to the LHS side upon height. So it will become 0.433 into density. Okay, so let's move ahead. Also, one more thing is there. So this pressure gradient is also referred to as the mud gradient. Why? Because the pressure gradient is basically the by what rate the pressure is increasing as we are going downward. Okay, in our case, what will be the pressure? If let's say I'm talking about a well. Okay, let's say this is my well, this is the casing shoe, and this is my well. Okay, and this is my drill string, this is my annulus, and this is my formation, right? So whatever the pressure that I am having over here, that will be known as formation pressure, right? And this formation pressure will be because of the pressure of fluids which will be trapped in between the pore spaces. And what we are having over here and over here, we are having the mud. So mud, let's say of density rho MUD, density of mud. So because we are having the pressure in drill string and in annulus because of mud, it is also known as the mud gradient. And Similarly, the pressure in the formation is known as the formation pressure. Similarly, the pressure due to the mud is known as the hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure. And if we and just imagine this situation. If I want to avoid the situation where there's a formation fluid, the fluid which is present over here, it it's under abundant pressure because of the overburden rocks, the rocks which are present above it. Let's say this is some 10,000 feet. Okay, let me clear a bit. Okay, so just assume this was my well racing shoe. This was my formation, and pressure due to the fluids in the pore spaces over here is known as the formation pressure PF, and the pressure over here is known as the hydrostatic pressure, the pressure due to the mud. Now we have let's say this depth is this depth is 10,000 feet. Okay, so as you can see, there will be a lot of rocks over here in this complete 10,000 feet. So they will be exerting some pressure over here. Okay, and that pressure will be pushing the formation fluid, whatever the fluid that is present in the pore spaces, into the well bore. But we want to avoid that situation. So what should be the ideal situation, that this hydrostatic pressure, the pressure because of the mud, should be greater than the formation pressure. If this hydrostatic pressure will be greater than this formation pressure, then the formation fluid won't be able to get inside the wellbore. So generally what we try to do is we keep hydrostatic pressure greater than formation pressure, and this situation is known as the overbalance. So what will be the balance situation? When the formation pressure and the hydrostatic pressure both are equal. But if we are keeping the hydrostatic pressure a bit greater than formation pressure, then it is known as overbalance. We are giving certain pressure over the balance. Okay, and how much this overbalance should be, the some value should be there, no? So the industry standard is to keep the overbalance upon around 200 to 300 psi. That hydrostatic pressure should be greater than formation pressure by 200 to 300 psi. Just bear with me for some time. I'm just taking some time to get through the basics. I guess you have already know all these things, but still I'm going through it. So just bear with me. Okay. So I've already talked about the hydrostatic pressure. So what I've talked about the hydrostatic pressure in the previous slide. So the pressure uh, which uh, which we are getting because of the mud column. Okay. So as we have already discussed that the hydrostatic pressure. Just a second. So, okay, so we have already discussed that the hydrostatic pressure, that the pH will be equals to 0.052. This is a conversion factor, the mud weight n into true vertical depth, that is in feet, ppg, and 0.052, and we will get the psi. And just like the normal situation where the pressure does not depend upon the size or the shape of the container, it simply depends upon the depth or the height of the container. In a similar way, the hydrostatic pressure will also not depend upon the hole size or the hole geometry. As you can see over here, there is no factor of hole shape, size, or anything like that. There is just the depth or the height of the well. and the obviously the mud weight. For example, if let's say mud weight is given as the 10 ppg, 10 parts per ppg, pounds per gallon, and true vertical depth is 10,000 feet. Okay, so what is this TVD? TVD means true vertical depth. True vertical depth. So sometimes what happens is, let's say my well is vertical, but at sometimes it might be also be possible that my well is directional well, or it could be something like, as you can see in all these three cases, A, B, and C, the lengths and the actual length are different, and it will be the maximum in C and minimum in A. But if I talk about the vertical depth, it is all same. Okay. So that's why if I talk about the pressure at the bottom, it will be same in all the three cases. So because my pressure will depend upon the true vertical depth and not on the measured depth. Okay. So there is two terminologies over here. One is the true vertical depth and other one is the measured depth. Measured depth is the actual path traveled by the well. Okay. So if I talk about this example, the mud weight is 10 ppg, true vertical depth is 10,000 feet. So what will be my hydrostatic pressure? 0.052 multiplied by 10, that is 10 ppg, and into 10,000 it will be equal to 5,200 psi. Okay, so as I've told you that my well is something like this, and this, my formation. Okay, and my this is my drill string, and this is my annulus. And what is annulus? Annulus is basically the space between my drill string and the boundary of the well. Okay, so it is basically a YouTube effect. We are having one drill bit here and the nozzles from here. So whatever my mud will be there, it will be going down, 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 and it will be coming out from the nozzles of the bit, and it will be circulating in this way. Okay, so at this point, if I talk about the bottom point where the annulus and the drill string are meeting, so if I talk about at this point and if I talk about at this point, wait. So yeah, if I talk about at this point and if I talk about at this point, the pressure at both these points should be equal because my mud density is not changing and my depth is equal. So let's consider this point as this one. Okay, so the pressure at the bottom of the well is known as BHP, which is bottom hole pressure. The pressure at the bottom of the hole. Okay, so let's say a situation is there. We have row 1, and here we have row 2, here we have row 3, here we have row 4, and here we have row 5. So the pressure over here, the pressure over here because of annular side should be equal to the pressure due to the density due to the mud of density 1 plus mud of density 2 plus mud of density 3, and it should be equal to the sum of pressure due to the mud of density 4 and mud of density 5. So in totality we can write, and let's say we are considering this as the bottom of the hole, so BHP, that will be equals to 0.052 multiplied by height. Let's say this is H1, this is H2, this is H3, this is H4, and this is H5. Okay, so it will be H1 row 1 plus And if we will take and similarly H2 rho 2, H3 rho 3. So if we take out 0.052 common out of all, so it will be this one, H2 rho 2 plus H3 rho 3. Okay, this will be from the annular side. So what will be from the drill string side? Equals to 0.052 multiplied by rho 4 H4 plus rho 5 H5. Okay, is this understood? I hope so. All these things are very, easy, and I thought that there is no need to teach all this, but still I'm going through it. So because on this platform the lecture will be widely available for all the, all type of student. Basically, for if you are even if you are from the first year or from the final year or even if you have graduated. So if you are finding this thing too basic, you can skip it. Or if you still want to go through it, you can just increase the playback speed. Okay, so in that way it will be good enough. Okay, so this is basically nothing but, let's say, this is my well again. This is my annulus, right? This is my drill bit. This is my formation. Now, what is happening? Here we are having the drill string, one drill string side and two annulus side. One is the left hand side and the other one is the right hand side. And the similar thing that we have done over here. So this is what? This is my drill string side. This is my drill string side. Wait, let me check. So this is my drill string side. This is the left hand side of my annulus and this is the right hand side of my annulus. Now let's assume one situation uh, where I have this drilling mud over here, okay, and here some gas is there, okay, and the similar thing that we have discussed in the previous slide, that we are having, let's say, different density fluids in the annulus. Okay, so let's say rho 1 density. Here we are also having rho 1 density, but here we are having the rho 2 density. Okay, some gas is there. Okay, so rho 2 density. So this is known as the drill string or the drill pipe, we can say. Okay, and here this is the annulus. We have already discussed this is the annulus, this is also annulus, and this will be the casing. Okay, casing is basically pipe which is used to, you know, seal the well bore and well bore walls. Okay, so we'll get onto that in the later stages, but just bear with me for some time. So the space between the casing and the drill string is known as the annulus. Okay, so let's say bottom hole pressure. If I'm talking about, let's say the pressure because of this drilling mud is 5000 psi. Sorry, let's say the pressure because of the hydrostatic is 5000 psi. Okay, and the formation pressure is total 5000 psi, 500 psi. Now I want to keep certain overbalance, but it is underbalance. What I've talked about, what I've told you about the overbalance, that it is the pressure above the balance. So 5500 psi is the balance pressure, and uh, this is which we need to balance at least. Okay, but I'm having only 5000 psi pressure because of my mud. So what I will do, I will give some back pressure. I will be having some choke set up over here, because of which I'll be giving some pressure. So this extra pressure that I'll be giving will be adding on to this pressure due to the drilling mud, and it will be balancing my formation pressure. Okay, so formation pressure was 5500 psi, and the mud density and the, sorry, the pressure due to the drilling mud was 5000 psi. So how much extra pressure I need to give? 500, right? So this 500 psi is known as shut in drill pipe pressure, that is SIDP. TP. As I've told you that this is a drill string. Okay, this was drill string, and drill string is made up of drill pipe. So how much if I want to shut in, like if I want to balance the formation pressure, that means I want to shut in, I want to balance it, that whatever the formation fluid that was coming from the formation, it should shut off, it should shut in, it should end, it should not come into the well bore. So this process is known as shut in, right? What is shut in? Actually, we'll be getting onto the next slides. But in the layman's language, we are shutting off the supply of formation fluid from the formation. For this, how much pressure I need to, how much back pressure I need to give from here? That is 500 psi. Now, suppose here we are having the 5000 psi, but in the annulus, the whole column is not because of mud. There is partial uh, hole filling because of gas also. Okay, let's assume there is one situation, some formation gas has arrived into the annulus and it has filled this particular depth. So, and let's say the pressure because of this particular depth is 200 psi, and pressure due to the mud column in the annulus is 4600 psi. So 4600 psi plus 200 psi, it is 4800 psi. But how much I want to get? 5500 psi. So how much back pressure I am supposed to give from here? 5500 minus bracket 4600 plus 200. Okay, and that will be equal to 700 psi. So this 700 psi will be known as shut-in casing pressure. Okay. Now, as you can see, because of some gas that has came out of the formation, the hydrostatic pressure in the annulus has decreased. So there could be some other reasons as well where this could lead to the decrease in hydrostatic pressure. So let's go on to those reasons one by one. Now, causes of the hydrostatic pressure reduction. Now, let's say if I am taking my string out of the well. So you have heard about the Archimedes principle, right? And what it says that the volume of the fluid displayed should be equal to the volume of the metal, or the volume of the equipment, or whatever the volume that we are removing from the hole. So if I am let's say removing my drill string from the formation, okay, let's say I'm pulling it out. So what will happen? The formation, the hydrostatic mud column, the mud that I am having in my well, okay, it will go down. So what I'm supposed to do to maintain the hydrostatic pressure, because if my mud column is going down, obviously my hydrostatic pressure will also go down, because my hydrostatic pressure is depending upon two values, that is the density of the mud and my depth. Okay, and my depth, this is 0.052. This was my pressure, right? And my pressure was depending upon either on the density and the depth of the my mud column. Okay, so my density is not changing. What is changing when I am taking out my drill string? Depth. So what I'll do, when I am pulling out, or when I am taking my drill string out, I am supposed to fill some extra drilling mud. Okay, so let's say I was supposed to pump in 10 liters of mud. Okay, but instead of 10 liters, I filled up only 5 liters of mud. Okay, that is improper hole fill up on trips. Trips means basically trip. My complete drill string is going on a trip. Okay, if it is coming out of the hole, I will say that it is going on out trip, trip out, tripping out. And if I say it is going down, then it will be known as tripping in. It is running into the hole. Okay. So I guess the first method will be clear. The first reason of the hydrostatic pressure reduction will be clear. The second reason is swabbing. Now, what is swabbing? Sometimes what we are doing, we are pulling out too fastly, so there will be a suction effect. Okay, so because of suction effect, it might be possible that a lot of the formation, or sorry, the hydrostatic mud will come out of it. Okay, so because of this also there will be some hydrostatic pressure reduction. Again, now if we see into this formula, what the other factor? The density. Okay, so let's say the chemist who prepares the mud in oil and gas industry doesn't perform or doesn't work efficiently, and and he hasn't prepared the mud of a particular density that he was supposed to do. So it will again lead to insufficient mud density. It will result into the decrease in hydrostatic pressure. Now, if I'm talk about the loss circulation, what if let's say this was my formation, okay, and there was some, let's say, weak formation, and because of my mud hydrostatic pressure, my overbalance, remember I've told you about that I'm supposed to keep 200 to 300 psi overbalance pressure. So let's say we encounter some weak formation, and the complete mud started getting lost into the formation. So what it will lead into, it will lead into the decrease in the fluid column. Okay, so this is also known as the loss circulation. Then there will be the cascade mud. Let's say I am drilling into the formation, and some gas from the formation get into the wellbore. What will happen? It will start getting mixing with my drilling mud, and by the law of mixing, if some lighter density thing or the lighter density mud is getting mixed into the heavier element or the heavy density element, the overall uh, mud density will decrease. So it will also result in the decrease in hydrostatic pressure. So there could be the different modes of law circulation. So it's a very crucial example or a question that can come in the GATE exams. It hasn't arrived in GATE exam ever, or hasn't mentioned on any test series ever. So there could be the different types of formation. There could be some porosity permeability matrix. Okay, some pores or permeability into the formation should be something like that. It's a basically high porous or the high permeable region. So if my circulation or if my mud is getting lost, so how the graph will be shown? So it will be something like that. Okay, kind of parabola. Okay, if it is a natural fractured formation, it will be a stepwise. Okay, stepwise parabola, and ultimately it will become constant. What about induced fracture? What if we have induced the fracture into the formation? So the what we say, the profile will be something like this. And what about the cavernous formation? It is mostly the attribute of carbonate reservoirs, where we encounter a lot of caves kind of formation in the underground or at the bottom hole. So just try to remember. So a question can come in the GATE 2022. So just try to, pictographic memory, just try to remember the visual, that yeah, if certain kind of graph is there, then it could be the porous or permeability matrix due to porous and permeability. If a certain kind of graph is there, then it could be due to natural fracture. A question can come that you would be given different graphs, and like match the following, that which graph matches to which reason. Okay, so just go through it. Now I've already talked about the formation pressure. What is the formation pressure? The pressure exerted by the fluid that is present in the pore spaces. Now it can be either normal, abnormal, and subnormal. What is normal? Normal if my pH, that is hydrostatic pressure, is equals to formation pressure. What is abnormal? If my hydrostatic pressure is greater than my PF. And what is the subnormal? Sorry, wait. if my formation pressure is greater than the hydrostatic pressure. And what is the subnormal? If my hydrostatic pressure is greater than my formation pressure. Okay. Okay. So generally we say that it is 0.433 psi per feet to 0.465 psi per feet. Okay. Now this is what pressure gradient, and why it's a range? It's range because this is because of fresh water and this is because of salt water. Now, if it is greater than 0.465 psi, then it will be the abnormal. And if it is less than 0.433 psi per feet, then it will be subnormal, right? Okay, so this will be the pressure gradient. Okay, if I'm talking about the density of fresh water in ppg, then it will be 8.33, and here it will be 8.65 ppg. So similarly, the same thing has been mentioned over here. The fresh water, it is 0.052 into 8.33 psi per feet, 8.33 ppg, and over here it is 0.052 into 8.92. Sorry, I mentioned that it will be 8.65. It is not 8.65, it is 8.92. Okay. So similarly, if the formation pressure gradient, abnormal pressure, subnormal pressure, and normal pressure, we have already discussed about this thing. Now, what could be the reason for having the abnormal pressure? Now, the number one reason is undercompaction. As we all know, whatever if you must have studied under the geology, that what is the process of sedimentation? That so initially some basin is there, and sediments has been coming over here, and they are getting deposited layer by layer. This is the stratigraphy, right? Okay. So let's say we are having over here shale, let's say here we are having sandstone, let's say here we are having limestone, and so on. Now, again, time of deposition or the sedimentation. Let's say initially their shale has been deposited, but when the time came for the deposition of the sandstone, it take a lot of time. Okay, so shale got enough time to get sedimented or deposited. So whatever the water that we had in our pore spaces, okay, so something like this is there. These are the molecular level or the porous level. In this way, our minerals are constituted together, rock particles, and in between these are the pore spaces in between which, wait, so So this is our water trapped in between these pore space. So let's say consider two situations. The situation first is where we are getting enough time for the deposition of the second layer. The deposition of the second layer has not started immediately after the deposition or the sedimentation of the first layer. So these water particles will get enough time to move out, right? My rate of deposition is low. Okay. So what will happen? There will be the under compaction. Okay. Now consider another situation. Situation second. The rate of sedimentation is too fast. Okay. The shale deposited just after that sandstone deposited, and just after that limestone got deposited. So the water particle doesn't get enough time to move out, and they won't get the enough time to expand. So what it will result into? It will result into the very high pressure because they have been trapped into the very small spaces. If the sedimentation hasn't been faster, it would have gotten some time to expand and release some pressure. But since because they haven't got any sufficient time to release the pressure, they have been trapped into the very small volumes. And because of this, they are under tremendously high pressure. Okay. So in general, the geologic process change the color of the pen. So in general, the geologic process is such that the rate of deposition is slow and gradual. Hence, the excess water gets enough opportunity to escape to the surrounding formation and full compaction result. But in our second case, when the process of sedimentation was high or the rate of deposition was high, the compaction that it was supposed to happen, it didn't get its due time. Okay, so it will be having a lot of overburden pressure, right? Another thing is the artesian effect. Now, assume that, let's say, okay, so this is my drilling rig, and this is the formation that I am targeting. Okay, now let's say there is meteoric water or the like this rain water, and there is some lake. Okay, and it is in direct continuous touch in between this formation. So because of, and let's say it is at some particular height. Okay, let's say it is, this particular thing is at some height above at this formation. Okay, so because of this pressure, the hydrodynamic, it is moving because it is water and it is in dynamic process. So, and it is water, so water plus dynamics equals to hydrodynamic. So because of this hydrodynamic flow, the pressure over here, the pressure in the formation fluid will be higher than the normal. Okay, so the same thing has been given over here. Okay, just go through it. Let's move on to next. Faulting. Now, everyone, you must have heard about the faulting and faulting. Okay, so faulting is like all the tectonic activity that can happen. So it might result into the, let's say, upthrust of my formation. So let's say initial, this was my ground surface. Okay, this is my ground surface, and below it I am having this formation. But because of some tectonic movement, let's say this plate moved upward and this plate goes down. So initially, because of let's say 1000 feet, so the pressure over here should be equal to, or should be concurrent with the 1000 feet pressure, but because this block has moved ahead or upwards. Okay, so let's say now this block is here and this block is here, and let's say this was my 1000 feet, but now this is, let's say, 500 feet. So the 1000 feet worth of pressure, we will be finding it at 5000 feet. So again, pressure will be higher here. So when we will be drilling, if we will encounter this formation over here, we won't be expecting this much pressure, because this much pressure would be expecting at this point of time. Okay, but since we are expecting it before time, again it will lead to overpressure. Now gas cap effect. Now again, you might have studied all these things in the geology. So this is a anticline. Okay, and mostly we will target for such formation to drill out our wells. Okay, so in the underground we have formations like these, and because of the density differences, uh, we have gas at the top, then we are having the oil, and then we are having the water. Okay, so let's say the pressure over here, let's say this is the A point, and let's say this is the B point. Okay, and if I talk about this depth, this is 8,000 feet. Okay, and if I talk about sorry, okay, let's say consider this situation we have. Okay, so this is the 8,000 feet and this is, let's say, 1,000 feet. So what will be this height? This is 7,000 feet. Now density of the gas, let's say, just bear with me for some time, you will get to know what we are doing. It's zero point 0.1 psi per feet. We are just all these are the assumed values. Okay, now if I'm talking about the normal pressure, okay, so if I talk about what will be the pressure, normal pressure at the point A, if it is 8,000 feet, as simple as that, 8,000 into normal pressure gradient, which is 0.465. So this is supposed to be the pressure at point A if it has been the normal. So it is point A, it is 0.465 into 8,000, that is 3720 psi. Now what is the pressure because of this gas column? It is 0.1 into 1000, that is 100. Okay. Now what should be the pressure over here? It will be simply pressure over here minus the pressure of this gas column, right? So what I have done, 3720 minus 100, it will be giving me 3620 psi. Now let's check the pressure gradient over here. What it will be? It will be simply, what is pressure gradient? Pressure gradient is nothing but pressure divided by the depth. The 3620 pressure is at 7,000 feet. 7,000 feet. Okay, so it will be giving me 0.517 psi per feet. It is greater than 0.465, so it is over pressure. Okay, this type of question or the question on this concept that we have just discussed has been arrived in GATE and a lot of test series a lot of times. So it's a very crucial aspect. And the GATE authorities just love to give the question from this thing, from this concept. And mark my word that every single time a question from this concept is bound to come in exam. So buckle up. Okay. Okay, so we have already talked about the bottom hole pressure. So what is the bottom hole pressure? Bottom hole pressure we have already talked that let's say this is my drill string, this is my casing, this place is the annulus, and bottom hole pressure. So the pressure at the bottom will be the combination of all the drilling mud, all the different density mud present in the drill string, and it should be equal to the sum of all the pressures that has been acting in the annulus. So there could be some pressure losses also. We are supposed to include that as well in the bottom hole pressure. Okay, and in all the operation we are supposed to keep the bottom hole pressure constant and in certain overbalance to prevent the entry of formation fluids into our well bore. Now let's talk about the different well situation. Now let's say situation one, when it is not circulating. Okay, this is my, okay. Now we are having over here pH. Here we are having some pH. Okay. Now bottom hole pressure. Now no mud has been circulated, so we are having the homogeneous mud in both the sides. Okay. So it will be simply the hydrostatic pressure of mud column will be equal to the bottom hole pressure. Now let's say I am drilling. If let's say drilling is going on, if some drilling is going on, my mud has been circulating. If mud has been circulating, there will be some frictional losses. and let's denote these frictional losses by APL, that is annular pressure losses. So what will be my bottom hole pressure? That is the hydrostatic pressure plus my annular pressure loss, that will be equal to the bottom hole pressure. Okay. Now, if you remember, we have discussed one example where, where we have talked about this shut-in casing pressure, shut-in drill pipe pressure, and all these things. That how much back pressure we are supposed to get. Okay. So let's say we have shut-in. Okay. हमने shut-in कर दिया. We have shut-in. So if I talk about the drill pipe side, how much pressure, how much BHP will be there? The pressure of the drilling mud plus the back pressure that we are giving, which is shut-in drill pipe pressure. What about the annular side? The pressure of the mud plus pressure of gas plus the back pressure. Okay. So if I talk about what will be the shut-in drill pipe pressure, it will be BHP minus hydrostatic pressure. That is, formation pressure is nothing but bottom hole pressure that we are maintaining minus hydrostatic pressure of mud in drill string. Here we are assuming the normal situation where we are having the bottom hole pressure equal to formation pressure. What about the bottom hole pressure while killing? Okay, when we are killing, okay, so killing, we get onto that later on, that what is the killing. For now, just remember that killing is basically putting in the heavier mud, okay, to increase your overbalance. Just remember, for it's not the actual terminology. For a while, killing just mean that we are killing something. So what we are killing, or we are preventing the influx of formation fluid from the formation. For this, we are putting some heavy mud into the drill string. So again, this is my drill string. This so let's say there is some heavy mud. I called it kill mud. There was some original mud. Okay, and then there was some gas which has arrived from the formation. Okay, so what will be the bottom hole pressure total? The mud, the pressure due to kill mud, the pressure due to original mud, the pressure due to influx, and some frictional losses. Now consider a situation. Let's say we are tripping in. What I've told you about the tripping in, that my complete drill string is going into the formation, or sorry, going into the well. Okay. When such is a situation, there will be certain pressure of this running in as well. Assume, let's say, you might have observed this phenomena in your bathroom, that let's say this is a bucket, and this is our mug. This is full of water, and then you try to push your mug into the bucket. So there will be some pressure that will be exerted on this water, and the similar kind of pressure, the recoil pressure, will be exerting over this mud as well. So sometimes it might happen that the pressure that you are exerting on this mug to push it into this column of water, it will lead to redistribution of pressure onto the walls of the bucket, right? So in a similar way, when you are pushing this drill string into the column full of mud, that pressure will be redistributed onto the walls of the wellbore, and if we encounter some weak formation, it can result into the lock circulation, which we have discussed earlier, right? So this pressure, this extra pressure that we are facing because we are running in or tripping in, that is known as the surge pressure. Okay, so what will be the bottom hole pressure in such a situation? The pressure of the mud column plus this extra pressure. Okay, now There is one more terminology that we have already discussed earlier. So what if we are pulling it out very fastly? It was swabbing. Remember, I've talked about that negative pressure or suction is created. So in that case, it will be bottom hole pressure will be equals to hydrostatic pressure minus swab pressure. Okay, it won't result into the overpressure. Okay, so this if I'm talking about the surge pressure, so surge pressure which will be it will be depending upon the various factors. Okay, so it obviously it will depend if on the running in speed. If I'm running in at a very fast speed, the my surge pressure will increase. Let's say my mud, the column of mud that has been filled up in the wellbore is very viscous. So again, it will be more efficiently distributing this pressure and breaking the wells. Then annular clearance. Let's say this annular clearance, the distance or the gap in between the casing and a drill string is not much. It is very thin. So my mud, which will be getting displaced because of this metal or the drill string that is entering, won't get much space to be displaced. So it will be exerting more pressure on the wellbore than bottom hole assembly length and the size. So this bottom hole assembly and is nothing but just for now understand that it's a part of drill string with certain tubulars or the certain pipes which is having very large outer diameter. So if it is having the larger outer diameter, automatically it is having the smaller annular clearance, and resultantly it will lead to increase in surge pressure. So as I've already discussed about the hydrostatic pressure minus swell pressure. Now, what will happen if I'm, let's say, changing the SPM? As you all know that here we are using the reciprocating pumps, right? Reciprocating pumps to circulate our mud into the drill string and up the annulus. Now, let's say if I have changed my SPM. What is SPM? SPM basically is strokes per minute. So if I'm changing my SPM, it will lead to change in my pump pressure. So there is basic relationship between the pump pressure and the SPM. It is P1 by P2 equals to SPM1 by SPM2. That is, you can say that my pump pressure is directly proportional to my SPM. So P1 by P2 is equals to SPM1 by SPM2. So what will be my P1? Let's say P1 is the new. It will be equal to SPM new. Sorry, it is square. SPM new by SPM old into P2, which is old. Okay. So quickly let's get onto the one numerical for this. Okay. So just let's say at 30 SPM, my pump pressure was 200 psi. So this was my uh, old SPM, and this is my old pressure. So what will be the pump pressure at 60 SPM? This is the new SPM as per my formula. So P new will be equals to 60 by 30 square multiplied by 200. So this is 24800 psi. Simple. What if I'm changing my mud weight? The way if I'm changing my changing the density of the mud, or if I'm replacing my old mud with a new mud, just in the case of in the previous slide. Uh, Here where I was explaining you about the killing process, I told you about now that we are circulating the heavier density mud. So in such situation, if I am changing the density of my mud, then also there will be some effect on pump pressure. So again, sorry. So again, the pump pressure here is directly proportional to the density of mud. In a similar way, you can correlate or you can solve certain numericals for the same. So here with 10 ppg, this is the old, this is old, this is new. So new pump pressure, new, this is new, this is old, and this is old. So it will be 240 psi. Okay, now what if I'll combine both initially? This was 90 SPM, this is old, this is old, and this is old. So we have seen two relation till now. Okay, one is that pump pressure is directly proportional to SPM square and pump pressure is directly proportional to the mud density. If we combine both, what will be happen? What will happen? It is directly proportional to SPM square multiplied by density of mud. Using this, you can solve this example. So basically, P1 equals to SPM 1 square into density 1, P2 equals to SPM 2 square into density 2. This is 2000, this is 90, and this is 11, this is 45, and this is 16. And you are supposed to find this. Just divide both these things and you will get the answer. Okay. Now let's talk about the barrier theory. Now what is barrier theory? Now what do you understand by barrier? Barrier is something which prevents something. Okay, barrier could be anything. When you are okay, like in the colonial era, the police or the administration has on the road has put up some barricades. So what are those barricades? These are some barriers. Okay. So barriers, for anything to be said as barrier, it has to be tested. Okay. You can't say anything that okay, I just put a newspaper over here on a road, and that newspaper will stop the moving vehicles. It won't, right? We have to keep certain like some metal thing or something like that, which is actually called a barrier, right? We have to test it. We have to test for its pressure, that whether it will be able to hold the pressure in case of any contingency or not. So there could be in our case, this is my well, right? This is my formation, this is my casing, this is my drill string. Okay, so primary barrier. So there are basically three categories. One is the primary barrier, secondary barrier, and tertiary barrier. Okay. So primary barrier, the first line of defense, the second line of defense, and the third line of defense, or the final means of defense. So defense against what? What we want to prevent? We want to prevent the influx of formation fluid. We don't want it until we are ready. Okay, so we are putting the barrier against the unintentional flow of these fluids. So what is my primary barrier? It is obviously the drilling mud. What if my drilling mud is not able to keep up with its defense action. So what we will do, we will give the back pressure. For this back pressure, we use choke, and there is one equipment which is known as the BOP, that is blowout preventer. You have seen in the initial slides, the complete rig has been blown out, and there I have talked about the blowout. Okay, my formation fluid has blown out the complete rig. Okay, to prevent it, we use an equipment known as the blowout preventer, and in that we have different different devices into it. So a few of those devices acts like a secondary barrier, and the remaining called as tertiary barrier. Now these barriers, they can be either fluid or the mechanical barrier. Okay. Now, as I've told you, anything to be known as barrier, we have to test it. Okay. If I'm saying that my fluid is a barrier, so my fluid will be a barrier only when its hydrostatic pressure will be greater than the formation pressure. Only then it will be able to hold or hold the force, right? So if I'm talking about the drilling operations, the similar thing that I've talked about, my first line of defense is my drilling mud. Then I've talked about few of the devices in my BOP act as the secondary barrier, and few as a tertiary barrier. Then there are other barriers as well, which we will discuss, or it will be discussed in the production lectures. Okay, so earlier we have talked about the barriers. Now we will talk about the control. Okay. So people often get confused in between the barriers as well as the controls, because in barrier also we are having the classification as primary, secondary, tertiary, and in control also we are having the classification as primary, secondary, and tertiary. If I'm talking about the primary control, it will be because of my mud weight. I'm supposed to keep my hole full and it will do its job. What was my secondary control? The BOP. Okay. What if my BOP is also getting failed, and let's say the blowout happened, as we have seen in the initial slide. Then comes the process of control and recovery, and then the specialist comes. That is the tertiary control. So in primary well control, again, just a quick revision: use of fluid to prevent the influx of formation fluid into the well bore. Then in the secondary well control, we are using the BOP. And in the case of tertiary well control, what we are doing, if it's not getting controlled by the BOP also, then we will just squeeze the cement and try to seal it off. Now, if I'm talk about the primary, secondary, and the tertiary well control, what were these? Control of what? The well, control of well, to keep it in the usable condition. Okay, so this complete well control system is designed to detect a kick. What was that? Since long I am talking about the unintentional flow, so anything which was not intended to influxed into from the formation into the well bore, that is known as the kick. And if that unintentional flow becomes uncontrollable, then it becomes blowout. So kick, if we are getting the kick, it's fine because it's unintentional, but it is still controllable. But if this unintentional flow became uncontrollable, then it will become blowout. So what my what the purpose of my well control system is to detect a kick. Then I am supposed to close in the well at surface. Then I have to remove the formation fluid, the gas. Remember the gas that has been coming in the annulus, which was decreasing the hydrostatic pressure. I am supposed to remove this gas kick or the gas influx from the formation, and then finally I am supposed to make the well safe. Again, the mud hydrostatic pressure, if I'm talking about the primary well control, my hydrostatic pressure should be greater than my formation pressure. Let's say if I talk about this on the chart, if I talk about this on the chart, this is the graph, this is the depth by pressure. So with the increasing depth, my pressure is also increasing. this is my mud pressure line, and this is my formation pressure line. So every time I'm supposed to keep this mud pressure in the overbalance, right? So until and unless this line is over and above this formation pressure, we are in our primary well control. Now let's say underground some situation came where the formation pressure overtakes this mud pressure line. In that situation, we will lose our primary well control and the secondary well control will come into action. And the main function of the secondary well control is to restore the primary well control. Okay. Now, what will happen in the tertiary well control, as I've already talked about it, that first of all, we'll try to, pump the cement to seal it off. Okay. Or basically what we are trying is we are pumping substances. We are pumping the substances. Wait. And now what is happening? We are basically pumping the substance into the well bore to physically stop the flow downhole. So if I want to physically stop the flow downhole, then I have to pump certain the heavy particles into it. So it may involve pumping cement, but it is having the high risk of having to abandon the well afterwards. Now there is one more method that is known as the Barite plug. Now, Barite plug is nothing but basically some heavier additive. Now, as we all know that, just a second. Now, as we all know that the drilling mud that I am talking about since long, it is a mud. It is there will be some base and then a lot of additives. There will be A1, A2, A3, and the formulation of all these things will result into the drilling mud. So one of the additives is known as the barite, and it is basically used to enhance the density of the mud. So what we will do is we will employ this method which is known as the barite plug. And what is this barite plug? This barite plug is basically a slurry of barite in water, and we just keep on pumping and pumping and pumping. And once the slurry will be in position and we have stopped the pump, the barite, because of its heavier density, starts settling out to form an impermeable mass, and it will hopefully stop the flow of formation fluids. Okay, so this is one more exercise. Let's try to do it. Okay, so let's say this is again, this is my drill string. Okay, so rather, let's say here we don't need this thing. Okay, so this is my casing, and this is my boundary of well bore. What will happen now? This is my casing shoe or the weakest formation. Okay, so let's say I'm using the mud of 10 ppg over here, and this height is 5000 feet, and the surface leak of pressure or the this is leak of pressure is this term which has came from this LOT, which is leak of test. We'll get onto that later on. For now, just remember this surface leak of pressure is nothing but a backup pressure or the back pressure that we are giving from the surface. Okay, so now I want to find the formation strength. Okay, the maximum pressure that this casing shoe can withstand. So what it will be? The pressure because of this hydrostatic pressure plus the back pressure. So what it will be? 0.9 0.052 multiplied by density of mud, that is 10, and multiply by 5000 plus our surface back pressure. This will give me the value in PSI. What if I want to get to know that what is the maximum density of the mud weight that I can use for drilling or to continue the operation? So what if I know that this is the 10 ppg mud as of now, and what if with this back pressure that of 1200 psi, if I convert it into the density equivalent, mud density equivalent, so it will give me the proper value, right? So let's try to convert this 1200 value into the density equivalent. So what it will be 1200 divided by 0.052 multiplied by depth 5000. Okay, this will be the density equivalent. Okay, if I add this thing into my 10 ppg mud, it will be the maximum pressure or the formation strength of the shoe that it can withstand, and it will be in ppg. The similar thing has been discussed in the next lecture. So 0.052 into 10 into 5000 plus 1200, it gave me 3800 psi. Now the maximum allowable mud weight 3800 divided by 0.052 into 5000, 14.61, and the maximum mud weight similarly. So this value 14.61 ppg over here and 14.61 ppg over here, both are same. Okay. Now, if I talk about the maximum allowable annular surface pressure, that is MASP, it is nothing but the maximum allowable mud weight or the maximum formation strength in terms of pressure. Just a different terminology that has been used over here. Now, imagine the situation if I am increasing this density. Okay, if I am increasing this density, so my formation strength will be decreasing or not, because this thing is constant. Okay, this 3800 thing, it is constant. Let's say this is 3800, and this back pressure that I am giving, it is mass per value. Okay, my this thing is constant. If I keep on increasing this thing, so my this thing will be increasing, but this thing is equals to 3800 psi. This thing is 3800 psi. This is constant. If I'm increasing this thing, this has to be decreased. Okay, and vice versa. If I'm decreasing this thing, it has to be increased. So if my mud weight is increasing, mass value will decrease. If my mud weight is decreasing, mass value will increase. So that's the end of the first session. So we'll get on to the next lecture soon. And if you have any doubts, you can write on to us. Our experts will be connected, will be getting back to you sooner within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever the this policy that IP is following. And if you have any doubts, you can put up in the section, in the section that has been provided on the app. So I hope this lecture has been quite informative, and I know it has gotten a bit longer, but it's just because it's for the basic as well as for the advanced student simultaneously. I could have gone to it in a much slower time, just going on to the main things, skipping all the basics and everything. But for a while, just bear with me. In the next session, we are having the killing method, and it will be one of the best killing method lectures that you have gone through. So see you soon. Thank you.